The boy was out fishing when a storm hit and he was blown to an uncharted island where there was no sign of human life except for him and his pet dog Bailey. Luckily, they had a few supplies left in the boat and the boy took stock and realized that besides a box of matches and a few fish hooks, they only had a few crackers left. In order to hold out until help arrived, the boy took the hooks to the beach and tried his luck. But he did catch a fish in the rough sea. So they spent the first day on a deserted island with one man and one dog. But they had a good time. The next day they dug a lot of clams on the beach to make a reserve, and then began to leisurely wait for the arrival of the rescue workers' spare time to play bowling. Unbeknownst to them, due to the large number of islands in the vicinity and the dense forest, the rescue team was unable to find the area for a while. After waiting for several days with no results, the boy realized something was wrong. He was like a needle in the ocean. Rescuers could not have found him without getting closer. So he made a bold decision to dismantle the only wooden boat that could possibly take him out of here, and built a pile of wood in preparation for lighting wolf smoke to attract the attention of the rescuers. Sure enough, one day later, in his sleep, he heard the sound of an airplane engine. So he immediately went to the pile of wood and prepared to light it on fire. The wind blew his match out and the plane was already over his head. When he managed to light the fire again, he looked up and realized that the plane had already gone out of sight, and he had missed his first chance to rescue him. But the boy did not give up. He burned the fire to the highest level and waited for the plane to return. But even after the boat burned down at nightfall, he did not wait for the rescue plane. What's more, they didn't catch any fish for several days and the only cookies they had left were almost gone. The boy realized that this was not the way to go. So he packed up what he could and left a message on a board for the rescuers, and then took Bailey to look for the lighthouse he remembered. But they hadn't gone far when another rescue plane passed by, and the boy shouted as loud as he could. But by now they were in the middle of a valley, and with the tide rising, his voice was completely muffled, and he could only watch as the plane flew away once again. And the boy realized that this was not a good idea. Having missed 2 rescue attempts in a row, the boy's emotions broke down and he couldn't stop crying, not knowing where his future lay. At this point, Bailey made a whimpering sound to him as if to encourage him not to be discouraged. Under the comfort of Bailey, the boy eventually came to terms with the reality. At night there was a sudden downpour and they built a simple thatched hut and made a fire to keep warm. But from time to time there were howls from outside. When a bolt of lightning struck the boy, he was horrified to realize that outside the hut a wild wolf was staring at him as if it was about to come in and tear him apart. Bailey immediately jumped out, but the wolf did not fight, but turned and ran, and in the blink of an eye, the wolf and the dog disappeared into the darkness of the night. It was then that another wolf appeared in front of the boy and pounced on him. Then the boy realized that they had been caught in the wolves' trick of getting away from the mountain. But this was not the time to dwell on this. He could only flee out of the thatched cottage in a hurry. But the wolves were right behind him, determined to taste the taste of human being. Bailey came back in time to fight with the wolf, and after several rounds of fighting, the wolf was driven away. The boy survived, but what little food they had left was lost in the confusion. So he set up traps to try to catch some small animals to feed the hungry, and he did catch a mouse. But after some processing and roasting, it was only big enough to eat less than 2 fingers. But the boy still tore off half of it and gave it to Bailey, who swallowed it in one mouthful and then looked at his master with bated breath. The boy gave Bailey another half from his own hand, and so they both tasted meat again after a week. Meanwhile, the rescue team made progress, finding signs of human life on the beach, and the boy's father saw his son's message at first glance. So he led the search party in a net. But after a day and a night of searching through the island's dense forests and rocky terrain, they found nothing. On the other hand, after days of hunger, the boy had to think of insects. He mixed flies and unknown caterpillars with tree pulp and made a dark dish he wanted Bailey to try first. But the dog shook his head when he saw it. The boy hesitated for a moment, but his hunger overcame his reasoning, and he forced himself to eat a piece of it, and realized that it wasn't as bad as he thought it would be. So he just grabbed a caterpillar and shoved it into his mouth. And Bailey, seeing that he ate it so deliciously, took a bite. In this way, they rely on eating worms and drinking dew after a few days and nights of crawling and finally out of the dense forest. At this time he finally saw the memory of the lighthouse. What was even more unexpected was that the lighthouse had been deserted for many years and the boy had looked around inside but could not find anything useful. Just when he was in despair, he suddenly saw a man-made road on the opposite side of the mountain, which instantly energized him because it meant that there might be people living there. So he decided to go and find out what it was. But when they got closer, they realized that the 2 mountains were separated by a steep ravine, and the only way to the other side was through the trunk of a fallen tree, which was not only covered with moss, but also rotten, as if it might break at any moment. The boy looked down and realized that there was no bottom, so if a person fell down there would be no bones left. So he lay on his back and carefully groped his way forward. But halfway up he was surprised to find that the opposite side of the road was actually blocked by another fallen tree, which made the boy confused. He had worked so hard to get to this point, but it was actually a dead end. He looked around and realized that there was no other way to the other side of the road. Just when he was in despair, he suddenly heard the sound of an airplane engine and looked up to see a small glider, but before he could call for help, the plane whizzed over his head and disappeared from sight. Just when he was confused and thought he had missed the rescue again, the plane suddenly turned around and flew back. So the other side had already found him. Soon after the rescue team received the information, they sent a state-of-the-art helicopter to the boy's location. A rescuer slowly descended from the plane and without a word tied a safety rope to the boy. The boy cried out to save his dog and the rescuer agreed, but Bailey thought he had been abandoned and bit the rescuer's leg, hoping that he would take him with him, but his mouth slipped and he fell off the 100-meter high cliff and hit the water hard for a long time before slowly surfacing. But the dog did not have time to breathe a breath of fresh air and then was swept away by the rapids. At the same time, the boy on the plane also begged the rescuers to save their dog. But the rescuers did not find Bailey's body after scanning the circle, and then flew the plane away on the grounds that human life is important. Luckily, Bailey Goodwater eventually climbed to shore without any danger, but he looked up and realized that the rescue plane had already gone away. At this moment he was like a dead man's heart did not understand what he had done wrong. Life and death together with the owner to abandon their own, and then aggrieved lying on the rocks and sobbing. Do not know what the future should be? Meanwhile, the boy's parents learned that their son was rescued and could not help but embrace each other with tears of joy. But compared to his family's happiness, the boy was depressed. He did not know what happened to Bailey, whether it is alive or dead. Seeing his son so depressed, his father took him for a walk and encouraged him, hoping that he would be able to get over Bailey's incident. And his mother also printed out a lot of dog notices and posted them all over the house. But months went by without any news of Bailey, although they did hire a rescue team to look for Bailey, but the whole island is covered in thick forest, and trying to find a dog is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Eventually they had to give up after spending £200,000 on the search for a week. But the boy couldn't accept the fact that every day he stood on his balcony and blew the whistle calling for Bailey, hoping for a miracle. That day he blew the whistle as usual, but there was still no Bailey, and as he was about to go back to the house, he was disappointed when he suddenly realized that there was something in the bushes in the distance, and he walked forward in disbelief. He took 2 steps forward in disbelief, and then froze in his tracks. He saw that in the bushes was the man he had always wanted, Bailey, walking slowly towards him. He rushed down the stairs and ran in the direction of Bailey, but Bailey saw his master running towards him, did not greet him with the same glee as before, but like a child who had made a mistake. He was a bit at a loss for words. He didn't know if it was right or wrong for him to come back after all the hard work, and whether he would still be taken in by his master, and finally sat down on the ground waiting for his master to judge him. But what he got in return was the master giving him a warm embrace. It was only at this moment that Bailey finally let go of his heart and wagged his tail, bringing his journey home to a successful conclusion. In the eyes of a human, a dog is just a pet, but in the eyes of a dog, you are its whole life. They will only choose one owner in their life, so if you are not ready to take care of them for the rest of their life, please don't bring them